Change is a scary thing for the petrol head, and change is what we have now with this new RS5 coupe. So the previous RS5 debuted in 2010 and was the closest thing that Audi fans had to the old legendary Quattro. Now, it didn't have the old 5-cylinder soundtrack, but it made up for that with the howling V8 revving at 8,000 plus. But this new RS5 has a new mandate from Audi, and it's now meant to be more of a GT car mixed with a sports car, and allegedly is the most comfortable Audi RS ever. But let's address the elephant in the room, and that is the change of engine. Now, we've gone from that thunderous V8, which was the highlight of the previous car, but this car now features the new 2.9 V6 bi-turbo, joint developed with Porsche, and is similar to the Panamera 4S. The new engine is as powerful as the outgoing one, with 444 brake horsepower, but it's got almost a third more torque, 443 pound-foot, available at 1900 RPM, and you really feel the torque. Now, one benefit of going to the V6 is that the car is shed 30 kg just thanks to the engine. Now, the whole car itself is shed about 60 to 61 kg, and places the car squarely between the M4 and the slightly heavier C63 coupe. 0 to 60 miles per hour is pegged at 3.9 seconds, which is a point of a second behind the C63S, and the same as the new upcoming M4 CS. But the benefit of this car is, again, it's going to do it in all weather, where the other two will really suffer trying to get the power down. And it really does rocket forward. In fact, it reminds me in pace of the R8. Just with that Quattro system is really exciting. Now, what you really want to know is how the V6 has affected the sound. Now, Audi RSs are known for having thunderous sound like the previous RS5, the great RS3, the incredibly gorgeous sounding Audi R8. So naturally there's a lot of fear about what this car would sound like. This car has the optional Audi Sport exhaust, which is 1,000 odd quid extra. So the sound itself is a really nice sound. It's got a nice quality to it. Now, the issue with the sound is it starts off great, but it never hits crescendo. So unlike the M4, which is really exciting in the later rev ranges, or the C63S, which blasts and burbles and pops and bangs like an SLS in the lower revs, and then when it gets higher, this car starts well, and then it just sort of flatlines. Effect that has is that it makes you seem you're going a lot slower than you actually are. And we recently test drove the AMG C43, which is of course a car not in this price bracket, but it's sort of comparable because it's a V6 bi-turbo, it had the performance exhaust, and it's a 4MATIC system. And you saw in that video how thunderous that car sounded. I don't get why this one can't sound as good. But again, this comes back to the refinement that Audi are going for in the new RS5 and its new mandate. It's not trying to be the old RS5, it's not trying to be the RS6. What this is trying to be is a good GT cruiser. And genuinely, in sound profile, in that way it reminds me more of something like the AMG S63, where the sound is there, it's of good quality, but it doesn't hit crescendo like the rest of the range because it's a proper GT car. But what would be the harm in having a button here that would give you the best of both worlds, just like all the other manufacturers do? 100% that's something that Audi have to sort out in the facelift. At least give people the option. What will be really interesting to see is what people like Miltek and Akrapovic will do with aftermarket stuff on this, because I think it's got the potential to be great sounding. The actual sound quality there is nice, it burbles, it hits the right notes, it doesn't sound strained. It's also gotten rid of the dual clutch and now features an 8-speed ZF Auto gearbox, which is meant to have the same shifting times. And to be honest, I've been testing it now and the changes are pretty immediate. I don't think you're going to see any difference from the dual clutch. They've done a pretty good job on this box. Yeah, some rapid shifts. In terms of the turbos, I found them a little bit lacking in slow driving, but when they start spooling up, there's really no delay in power delivery, which is great. And to be honest, the boost you get is so similar to the Audi R8 in terms of the sheer G-force from accelerating. Just that is a pretty exhilarating feeling. Audi's Quattro system is 60-40 bias to the rear, and the UK cars comes with the standard sport differential, which is brilliant because it gives the car a bit more of a rear-wheel drive feel, along with managing that power better. And with the new Quattro system, the ratio changes quicker, which means the handling all feels a bit more natural. Now this car has the RS Sport suspension, and the handling, well, let's talk about the handling. The steering is an interesting one. This is an electric setup, as most cars these days. And one of the fears I had coming into this car is that the steering feel would be lacking going into the corners, and once you start turning, unfortunately, there is a fade of feel and response coming from the steering. You almost have to wing it after you've made your initial turn, and you're getting that, there's too much power going in, you're getting slight bits of understeer, but it's definitely much better than the previous car. It's definitely a much more enjoyable car in the corners. Now we're comparing this to precision cars like the M4, and indeed the new C63S Coupe is brilliant. But this is not far behind. It is the four-wheel drive traction helps it come out the corners, and it does it with considerable composure. And the benefit of this car is that it's going to do this despite the weather, whereas the other two are really going to suffer when it's anything but dry. Now let's talk about the suspension, because we keep saying this is meant to be more of a GT car, and the suspension is where this really shines, because without a doubt this is the most supple feeling and comfortable Audi RS that I've ever driven. And I got Joe Killies down in Sideways Sid to have a go in this, and they echoed it. In the comfort setting which we're in right now, it's just sublime, and you could really see yourself doing a nice long road trip to Europe or something in this, and I think I would really enjoy doing that in this car. It's that kind of car, you just want to sit in it and do loads of miles. It sounds good. The interior, as we'll get onto, is lovely inside. I don't think there's anything like it in the RS range for long trips, and considering that's what Audi were aiming for, I think they've done a pretty damn good job. The design of the car is meant to be based on the 90 Quattro IMSA race car, and it does look like that. So I'll show you what that car looks like here. It's got those square shoulders on each side and that general profile. And you've got the aerodynamic cuts on the front bonnet, which give the front a real aggression when you look at it dead on, and I'm sure when this car is coming up behind you, it is looking seriously mean, just like the RS6. The wheels, a bit under-designed in my opinion, as Audis seem to be going at the moment, but they look very GT car, which I guess is par for the course here. It has the black little vents on the front headlights and the rear lights, and the black trim strip on the side, and you can change the silver on the outside to gloss black with the package, and obviously you can get your carbon bits. On this spec, which is a bit more of a classy spec, the dark blue with the light interior, you lose those details, which is a shame because they're really nice and they sort of set the car apart from the standard S5. Now let's talk about this cockpit, which is, let's be fair, pretty close to class leading. So immediately the thing that hits you is the Audi virtual cockpit, which is just like the Audi R8, and it's brilliant. It looks good, it gives you all the information you want. Now they're ahead of Mercedes and BMW on this. BMW, even with the new M4 CS and the facelift of the M4, still with the analog dials, which is no bad thing if you like analog, like I do. And the current C63, again analog with a bit of digital. So Audi ahead of the game here, and it looks really good. Now again, you've got the door cards with lashings of Alcantara. The seats are brilliant with the honeycomb design. This central drive unit area, again, very Audi R8, which is a good thing. And it just looks and feels very special. One area that I love in this car, in the interior, are the controls up here. I've never seen controls up here that have been designed so beautifully. I'm a big fan of the steering wheel. I think it's a really nice shape. I like the way it sits in a little bit, and it's squared off at the bottom. It's a shame this one is an Alcantara, but you can get that in the car, and I definitely recommend it. If you haven't seen our Alcantara cleaning video, have a look. You can always keep Alcantara and Dynamica looking as fresh as it was from the day you got it. The other bit I absolutely love about the interior is that when you change the drive select from, say we're in individual dynamic at the moment, to dynamic, or to the auto setting, or to comfort, then the little LED strips along the side change the light. Now that's an option you can have. Either you can have your own colours, but I really like that drive select light change. It's like, especially at night when you're driving and you change the modes, the whole tone of the car shifts and it goes red when you're in dynamic, and that's a really nice little touch. I wish that Mercedes did that in their cars as well, and indeed BMW and the others, because it, at least if they give you the option like Audi have, it sort of signals to your passengers that things are about to get serious, and I think it's a really cool little touch. Now the individual mode here gives you loads of options. This car, or all cars in the UK, have the sport differential, which is great. Engine sound, of course. So there's a lot of options here to make the car your own. To sum it up, I'd be lying if I said that the sound of the engine hasn't been a disappointment, but I am an absolute sound addict. My favourite cars are AMGs because of the sound, but I can't knock the new V6 engine. It's got good power delivery, it's not as laggy as other engines I've tried, the new gearbox is delivering just as Audi said it would, so performance wise you can't knock it. So where the C63 and the M4 are now full-time sports cars and part-time GT cars, the RS5 is the other way around. It is a full-time GT car with the ability to be a pretty exciting sports car as well, but it definitely does the former better than the latter. To conclude it, the RS5 is that butch guy who, when he walks in the room, he looks really mean and intimidating, but when he starts talking, he talks a little bit like this. But he's got a great heart, and you can't help but love him. Next time on Remove Before Race. We're off to the Frankfurt Motor Show to drool over the latest and greatest cars from all the performance manufacturers. But the highlight will be at AMG, where they're celebrating their 50 years with the new Project One hypercar.